Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Bloom. I am a professor at the University of Notre Dame, where I have led the Flourishing in Ministry project for the past 15 years. We've been studying the well-being of clergy and other ministry workers, and our goal is to help you all flourish in your ministry, not just survive ministry, but to actually flourish. My team and I study several different helping and caregiving professions, and so flourishing in ministry is part of a larger project that we call Work Well, where we've studied global health workers, international aid workers, teachers, and now last year we started studying physicians in the United States. And so in some of the later sessions, you'll hear a little bit more about Work Well and some of the resources available to you through this larger project. I'm speaking to you from the mountains of West Virginia, and so you may hear some bird calls in the background. Our little home is on the top of a mountain in a forest, and it's delightful in the mornings to hear the birds singing. I have to admit to you that this is the first time I've ever recorded a session like this, so please excuse me if I stumble over my words or seem a little bit awkward. I'm much more accustomed to speaking to you live. But of course, in this time, this is a small adjustment for me to make compared to the many larger adjustments that you and others have had to make. During our time together, I'll be sharing in 4 10 to 15 minute sessions with the goal of helping you learn about wise well-being practices. And I want to just briefly describe what I mean by a wise well-being practice. It has 3 characteristics. First is that there's solid research evidence to support that the practice will actually improve your well-being. And so all of the things that I talk about, well, you can trust have good scientific evidence that they'll work. But a wise well-being practice also has to be preference aligned. It's something that you want to do and like to do. For years, I had heard about mindfulness practices. I just didn't enjoy them. I found them really difficult. The good news is that there are other practices that I can engage in that will have the same benefits for me as mindfulness. So they have to be preference aligned, something that you want to do. And they have to be lifestyle compatible. And that means it fits into your life schedule. And the good news here is that many well-being practices will take 10 minutes or less. So part of what I'll do over these 4 sessions is to help provide you with some principles that you can use, knowing that they're evidence-based, to find practices that you like to do and that will fit into your schedule. I also want to just emphasize that I speak as a scientist, and so the terms I use are terms that are common among science. But I want to invite you to bring your theological orientations, and of course I know that you will. If occasionally I use a term that you find a little bit more theologically cumbersome, I ask that you just find a term that works better for you. And I also encourage you to bring your theological orientations because, as we all know, they're fundamental to our well-being. Our notions of spirituality and religiosity are deeply important for both our physical health and our well-being. Over these first 2 brief sessions, I'll be introducing us to our scientific model of well-being. What we find is it's really important for us to know what our well-being is so that we can actually start to address our well-being needs and sustain our well-being over time. This is our model. It has 4 dimensions. We'll work briefly through each of the 4 dimensions. But please also notice that the model is meant to suggest that these dimensions work together. As one goes up, it tends to bring the others up. Unfortunately, as we experience declines in one area, if we don't address those declines, it can, over time, cause declines in the other areas. And this is important for many reasons, but in part because we have found that among helping and caring professionals, including clergy, daily well-being can be a challenge for them. But it tends to be something that they may ignore or find difficult to address. But left unaddressed over long periods of time, as I've mentioned, it can cause declines in the other areas. So we want to encourage you to pay attention to your daily well-being. And that's where we'll start, is talking about that important dimension. You could think of daily well-being in a simple way as, do you have more days where you feel like this most of the day, or do you have more days where you feel like this most of the day? Daily well-being is really fundamentally about the quality of our daily life experiences. Sometimes researchers use the term happiness, and I know sometimes that can be a theologically difficult term, but by happiness, we're really just referring to the emotional part of our daily well-being. Do we experience on most days mostly good moods? Happy, inspired, curious, interested, joyful? Or do we experience mostly difficult emotions, irritation, frustration, worry, or concern? So daily well-being is really about how our days unfold. Do we mostly have good days or mostly have difficult days? And daily well-being is the place where stress shows up in our model. One of the challenges for all Americans, and particularly we find helping and caring professionals, is that they tend to have more stressful days than unstressful days. And this is something that I want to empower you to help address. Stress is something that we can learn to deal with better and that we can learn to manage. So when I use the terms like daily happiness or daily unhappiness, I'm really using that to describe how our days accumulate. Do we have more very stressful days or more days in which we actually experience joy and positivity? And what science shows us is that our daily experiences of happiness or unhappiness do add up. And one of the places that this impacts us the most is our physical health. If we have more good days, more days of joy and inspiration and positivity, our immune systems are stronger, our bodies respond much more quickly and much better to illness and injury. And there's a growing body of research evidence that shows that an accumulation of good days leads to neurological health, strengthens our brain health. Last year, in one of the most prestigious journals in psychology, a team of researchers reviewed all of the research over the past 70 years on the association between stress and stressful events and our physical health. And I want to just share 3 of those surprising facts to illustrate the importance of addressing our daily experiences, our daily well-being. The first fact, fact 2, that I want to share is that stressful events can impact most diseases. And what this means is that stress really does contribute to most of the illnesses that we experience. It means that it has far-reaching effects, not just isolated to, for example, cardiovascular health, but it can affect a range of illnesses and chronic diseases. And of course, this is one of the reasons that it's so important to address. In fact 7, they say stressful events do not fall randomly from the sky. And what this means is that we can actually learn something about the stressful events in our lives. And once we've learned something about them, we can address them better. And so part of what I'll be teaching you or helping you learn is that let's look at what's stressful in our lives. And by looking at it, we can deal with it better. It's not random. It's something that we can learn about. And lastly, it's the chronic stressors that we really need to deal with. The acute ones are not as difficult, unless it's a very serious acute stressful event, say something that could cause post-traumatic stress. For most of us, it's the chronic stressors, the daily stressors, the regular stressors that are the most important. And so what this study showed us is that stress matters, but we can learn something about the things that stress us, and let's deal most particularly with those chronic stressors, the ones that come to us daily or weekly. So by having more positive daily life experiences, better daily well-being, we'll be physically healthier, we'll think better, we'll make better decisions. Science shows us that we're much better decision makers and much more creative on our good days than on our difficult days. And we'll be more resilient, which is the next dimension of well-being that we'll be dealing with. So what we really mean by daily well-being is, as I've mentioned, how days accumulate. So the question is, do you have more weeks like this where you have more difficult days, stressful, irritating, worrisome, aggravating days? Or do you have more days like this, positive, joyful, inspiring days? So it's not about having any one bad day or even having one difficult week. It's about how our days accumulate over time. What we think is a good rule of thumb is something like this, that we should have 3 good days for every 1 difficult day. It's just a simple rule of thumb, and it's a way for you to start assessing how your daily well-being is building up over time. One of the things that does happen, though, is our days tend to kind of fade into the past. We may say, well, I think I have mostly good days, or, well, I think I have mostly difficult days. But sometimes we find it really challenging to say, well, is that true? Or what makes my days good days? Or what makes my days difficult days? And so one of the things that we'll be learning is a powerful but simple, wise well-being practice is just to take notice of our days and take notice of the things in our days that make them good and the things in our days that make them difficult. And I'll be suggesting a couple of practices that you can use to help you do this. I want to just, as we end this a brief overview of daily well-being, note another review that came out about 10 years ago about successful aging. And successful aging isn't just for those of us that are actually in the AARP and over 55. We're aging throughout our lives. And one of the points that this article makes in reviewing all of the research on successful aging is that aging happens to us daily, day by day and week by week. It's, of course, something that's going to happen to all of us. But here again, when they focus on cognitive and emotional health, they're focusing on the importance, in part, of our daily experiences. And so more positive experiences can help us age better. No matter where we are in the chronology of age, having more good days is good for us. I want to shift now to resilience, which is the second dimension of well-being that we'll deal with in this session. Resilience, a part of it is what we'll call hardiness or grittiness. It's really about our ability to deal with life challenges well. Do we bounce back quickly from adversity? Can we deal well with difficult events in our lives? Or do we find ourselves chronically set back by simple or maybe even chronic difficulties that we face? Hardy people are more resilient. They can just deal better with daily life challenges. A second part of resilience is our ability to adapt and change as we need to and to experience positive personal growth. Physical growth, spiritual growth, mental growth, social growth are all parts of resilience. So resilience is both our ability to deal well with daily life challenges and our ability to adapt and change in positive ways and to grow. This is the place where burnout is. Burnout is an experience that results from chronically low resilience. Burnout begins with experiences of exhaustion that don't seem to abate. That chronic exhaustion eventually leads to declines in our ability to perform well in our work and in our lives. We find ourselves finding it difficult to deal with even simple tasks. What used to be simple now takes us so much longer. We're more irritated, we're more impatient. And over time, those declines in our capacities lead to very difficult challenges such as depression or anxiety or cynicism. And so burnout accumulates over time, and it's rather insidious because it builds up in the background. Most people don't realize they're burned out until they experience what some people say they crash or they hit the wall. Something very, very startling in their lives, but burnout has been building over time. So small declines in hardiness and adaptability and growth left unaddressed can add up over time, and that's what can create burnout. One of the things to think about with resilience, our capacity to deal particularly with daily challenges, is that if we've had several difficult days, it will temporarily weaken or deplete our resilience resources. Scientists sometimes use what they call the muscle metaphor. If you think about, say, perhaps there's a day that you have to help a relative or a friend move from one home to another. After that day of helping them move, you may find that your muscles are tired and you're just not as strong as you are on a day-to-day basis. And resilience is like this. When we use our resilience capacities, they're temporarily depleted. But if we engage in certain wise well-being practices, we can strengthen those capacities, much like if we exercise our muscles appropriately, we can make them stronger, and we can make their endurance longer. So the muscle metaphor highlights a couple of things that are important. One of those is if you've had a particularly difficult day, your resilience resources, your capacity to make good decisions, your patience, your tolerance are going to be temporarily reduced. And that's just natural. But again, with certain wise well-being practices, you can build those capacities so that when you face challenging days in the future, you'll actually have more resilience to draw upon. So resilience for almost all of us declines over the course of a day, even a good day. We've been paying attention to things, we've been making decisions, we've been using physical and mental energy, and so it's quite natural that it declines over the course of a day. If at the end of a day where you may have been sitting at your desk, you still find yourself physically tired, that's real because your resilience resources are depleted. You've made decisions, as I said, you've thought hard, you've focused, you've managed interactions with people, and even if they're good, they've temporarily depleted your resilience. You really do need to kick back at the end of the day. And as we'll find out, relaxing and doing something enjoyable are wise well-being practices to boost resilience. You need a break. And on our busy days and our difficult busy days, our resilience declines even more. And so we need to take notice of this. Give ourselves a break. If you've had a super busy day, your resilience resources are going to be particularly depleted. And if you've had a very busy day that's also been difficult, your resilience resources are going to be especially depleted. Those are the days in which filling your evening full of board meetings or challenging activities would probably not be a good idea. All else equal, we need even more rest and restoration on those busy, difficult days. One of the things we found in our research is that many pastors would describe themselves as introverts, and to be sure, some of them are. But when we asked the pastors who said they were introverts why they thought they were, many of them spoke about their need to be alone after a busy Sunday morning. And what is happening to those pastors is that Sunday mornings demand a lot from their resilience resources. Even good Sundays demand a lot from your resilience resources. You've interacted with a lot of people. You've had to juggle a lot of activities to manage worship. You've had to preach a sermon. You've had to be in a good mood. And so even on a good Sunday, your resilience resources are going to be significantly depleted. And so Sunday afternoons are an important time for you to experience some sort of Sabbath. A spiritual Sabbath is a wise well-being practice. In fact, a very wise well-being practice. And so for clergy, Sunday mornings are going to be a regular experience in which the resilience resources are going to be depleted. For me as a professor, the days that I teach are my Sunday mornings. Those are the days in which my resilience resources are going to be particularly depleted. And as much as I'm grateful for this opportunity to share with you in these videos are going to be a resilience use for me. And so I'll need to be aware that at the end of each video, I need to take a little break. I need to engage in a wise well-being practice to boost my resilience resources. So as I end this session, I want to suggest that you take some time to reflect on a recent good day and a recent difficult day. And I encourage you to jot some notes. Think about the good day first. And try to just describe what happened on that day that you think made it a good day. And also think about a recent difficult day and jot down some notes about what you think made that day difficult. This is actually a wise well-being practice. Just noticing what makes good days good is going to boost your well-being. And just acknowledging what makes your difficult days difficult is also going to boost your well-being. It also opens up the possibility for additional wise well-being practices. As you learn more about what makes good days good, you can build more of those elements into the days and capitalize on them. And as you begin to realize what makes the difficult days difficult, you can start to notice and address some of those problems. So I encourage you, take some time now, imagine a recent good day and jot some notes about what happened that day. Then imagine a difficult day and jot some notes about what happened on those days. This practice will help lead you to higher daily well-being, and it will boost your resilience. And I look forward to joining you in the next session.